What's going on out there, everybody? This is your boy Jay with Trey and Doc, and we're coming live from Retcon Comics Podcast. We appreciate everybody out there in the multiverse, metaverse, whatever verse you're tuning into us, and we appreciate that. We love you for that. Make sure you go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, and comment as we're going to get into this episode. And this episode is simply titled Mental Awareness. Alrighty, before we get started, I just want to talk to the fellas about this real quickly. And then this will definitely set the premise of the episode. It really means a lot to me that we're doing this. I watched the play this past weekend, Saturday, called Stuff Inside My Head. And my cousin-in-law, Jonathan Adams, he stars in it along with some phenomenal actors. It's really good, and it really touches on mental illness in all shapes and forms and fashion. And before we really get into this, we definitely want to put this out there, and Doc will keep me honest. If you are suffering, if you are suffering from any type of mental illness, it is okay to not be okay, and make sure you do reach out to whatever resources are at your disposal, whether it's through your job, whether it's family. Just make sure that you get the help you need. It is okay to ask for help. So I want to kind of lean over to Doc here. Mental illness, what is your experience with that professional? And if you are okay with sharing it, what is it personally? And does comic books play any type of factor in it?
Yeah, comics absolutely play a factor into it. I mean, every hero to a certain degree touches on some form of, mental illness.
Absolutely.
And has had some type of experience that kind of formed them into the hero or villain, for that matter. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, I am not a psychiatrist by any means,
Right.
We definitely dealt with patients who had issues, whether it would be postpartum depression, schizophrenia, bipolar disease. These patients, these people, they get pregnant, and for that matter, they're just people, and we see people for routine, annual exams and just, problem visits, and they have problems. You have people who hurt themselves. I've had several patients who, took a quick look at their arm and I saw cuts all over their arm that were healed. So definitely have had some experience with patients with things, and it gets challenging, especially in our profession, just because when you do, get pregnant, many of those medications are not conducive to pregnancy. They can cause birth defects, among other things. And so some of these patients have to come off of those meds, and it has to be a risk versus a benefit thing. So it gets quite challenging, because if you're going to ultimately hurt yourself and not survive the pregnancy because of that, then the risk doesn't outweigh the benefit, and you have to take it and then expose the unborn child to it. So it definitely gets tricky, and it's out there. Not all of that is reflected in comics, but yeah, I definitely have some experience. I remember I had this residency, this one patient who thought she was pregnant with puppies. No matter what we did, we would show her, I would do ultrasounds and say, look, this is a little human in you.
Yeah.
She just was intent on believing she was having puppies.
Wow.
I mean, what do you do with that? You just roll with it.
Yeah, what do you do?
Just make sure she's taken care of. So, that's just one example.
Man.
Right.
Wow.
When you say that, and I say this in all seriousness, because I know for the show we do keep it light, of course, but this definitely is a matter that we have to tackle. And it made me think about the movie Inception just a little bit, only for the part where Leonardo DiCaprio's character was trying to convince his wife that they were awake, that they were in the dream world, but she was adamant that she was not. Yeah. And that's interesting to think about, that actually is something like that exists.
Yeah, and it's even for my father who had epilepsy, and it started wearing on his cognitive abilities. The man I knew when I was a kid was not the man I knew when I was an adult. And it wasn't until I used to get upset with him and frustrated, but it wasn't until I got into medical school how I really realized he really had no control over it.
Right.
And that's when the anger and bitterness, just kind of left. And then there was a lot more compassion, because he really was not in control of a lot of these things. And always said at one point, it's hard for somebody whose brain that works to get it when somebody's brain doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's hard for you to fathom it because your brain works.
Yeah, and even that's a slippery slope because some of us have the illusion that our brain
works. Exactly.
You know what I'm
saying?
saying?
Who are you to say? Just like you said to Excel, who are you to argue with that this doesn't work?
Like, the lady was convinced she was having puppies.
Like
man, what am I convinced of? That's not, you know what I mean?
Right. That's
so
crazy.
Wow.
It definitely gets really tricky.
So
go ahead. Going back to your play and everything, you sent this to us last night, and I was like, man, what can I do? What can I say? And I even thought about it. I had a lot of, and probably still do have a lot of hangups because we've discussed it before, and a lot of it is built in me based off of my experiences.
Yeah, for sure.
And when I see people who think they're having puppies, when I see the bipolar patient, when I see the patient with what I deem is legit psychiatric disorders.
Right.
Remember how I said the other day, I'm like, I hate the word mental health. Because I feel like it's overused. I feel like everybody, and it's losing, it's watered down, it's losing the weight of it. Because when I think about mental health, I think about those serious psychiatric disorders. I have somebody who's having a bad day, and they're like, man, I'm having mental, and I'm just like, I'm cut from a different cloth. That's the thing that I'm talking about when you say somebody like pull up your bootstraps, get it together, come on. When I see that and I have people say mental health, it bothers me, and that's my own hang up because I'm up here, and this is what I'm dealing with. And I'm like, man, don't come talk to me about mental health. Like you don't know what it is.
You see it from a different space,
right?
Not to keep talking about it, but know what it's like to be around somebody who thinks they're having puppies.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And so it's not that I'm not being sympathetic to the fact that you have a bad day. It sucks. I had a bad Saturday and it sucked, but you get over it and you keep it moving. And that's the thing. I don't want my children. It's almost like at some point, a lot of times, I think we discussed this too. The children and the kids and the young adults nowadays, they don't have as much struggle.
Right.
And so when they finally are faced with adversity, they crumble.
Man.
And I don't want,
like
you know what I'm saying? I do. It does.
Okay. But even like my fear for kids is like not even necessarily that they don't have struggle. It's that their struggles are going to look so much different than ours. You know what I mean?
We talked about it with the Peter Parker, Miles Morales thing.
Right,
you remember?
right.
I said I read that one book and I'm like,
right.
Miles Morales could be a story of putting a bullet in his head.
Yeah.
Not to,
We
downplay it.
know what you're saying.
We know what he said. If he dealt with what Peter dealt with, but Peter was cut from a different cloth, he just is handling and moving it on. But it was actually really touching how Miles was getting overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And his family was there to lift him up. And I said, Peter doesn't have that.
Right,
but
support system makes it different.
Somebody said that's the thing about Peter. Was that you who said basically, he's the story of how you get by. Like,
right.
I do this and I push on.
That we have for Doc. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, so like I look at mental health from a personal standpoint. So, I haven't been, and this is kind of moment of transparency. Like, I haven't been clinically diagnosed with anything. Yeah. But I'm almost certain I've been depressed for like 13 years. All right. And, it's one of those things where, just growing up in a space where everybody was tough. You know what I'm saying? Everybody was tough. Nobody talked about their problems. I say this often to people, like, I've never seen my mom cry.
Yep. You mentioned that to us.
Not one time. My entire life. Outside of, like, church. Right? But, like, I've never seen my mom cry. I've never seen, like, her... nothing's ever seemed heavy to her. But, as an adult, now I know that that's impossible. You know what I'm saying?
Of course, yeah.
And so, we use the example of Peter Parker. Yeah, Peter Parker handles all of this stuff, but is he really handling all of this stuff? Like, if in the next issue of Spider-Man, if he has a nervous breakdown, everybody would be like, man, I get it.
I think that would be a great book. We've been talking about, was it you and I who discussed the thing where we were like, maybe he just takes a break and he like just is there to like counsel Miles. Miles steps up and become like, this is the one time, and I don't think it's race swapping, but this is the one time where he's established enough because they literally tried to make Miles Spider-Man. He can step up. Peter takes a freaking break because he just he can't take it anymore.
I mean, right now in the comic books, he and Mary Jane got somehow wound up in a different dimension, and then at some point he left, but she stayed. And time span was different,
she saved him, which stranded her, but saved
right. And then, but she stayed with some dude who was already there.
He was there, and he was
time
stuck.
Passed enough for her to have children.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. The
spoilers.
The timelines. Time moved differently in that this whatever dimension it was. Right. So when Peter was, and he knew he was on a timetable. He just didn't know how. What the rate of change was. Yeah. And so he's doing everything he can to try to get back. And I think, did a day pass?
Yeah, it was like a day.
Maybe or something. Yeah. And in that time period, 4 years had passed.
He just can't catch a break.
So she forms this relationship with this dude. Yeah. Once again, spoilers. If you haven't read it yet, then she at one point, when they come back to our universe, we're like, one of the kids is a little girl with red hair and everything, and we're like,
all that.
Wow. Oh, but we find out that in actuality, she did not bear these children. They found them, and they basically kind of adopted.
I didn't see that.
I'm sorry.
I didn't read that yet. I just sat here and said spoiler.
You heard me say I was going. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
So you got your moment. I have my moment. That means you're gonna have a moment next.
That means I know to avoid the trap.
Oh,
well, okay.
I'm sorry.
Moving on.
You need to go. You saw it was going. Oh my god!
But you did bring it up to a point where that's actually going to be touched on in our one shot. Man, I'm so mad. We're going to go ahead and move forward to.
I'm still doing the skit. So I'm telling you,
I'm so bad. I think it was a Family Guy skit I saw where, and I could be wrong, but I thought I saw where they do cutaway. They're famous for it, and Peter Griffin, he drove by. Everybody was in line for Empire Strikes Back, and he drove by talking about Darth Vader is Luke's father.
You can't, but Josh, you can't say spoiler alert and not know the spoiler. But you said it first. You said it first. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So with that being said, we're definitely going to touch on more of that in the one shot, y'all.
I'm sorry, Josh.
As far as superheroes and their trauma. But let's go ahead and jump straight into it.
I just traumatized.
Dude, that's funny. That's hilarious.
So mad. I love you, man. I'm so mad. We got the top 5, which is the mental illness comic book characters suffer from. Now, this was extremely hard because there are so many out there and there's so many characters. I could not fit them all in here, so I did my best to it came down to these illnesses and how many heroes or characters, period, have them versus the one-offs. And just like there was a honorable mention of Storm, who had claustrophobia. Mm-hmm. And phobia, is that a mental illness? Are phobias mental illnesses, or
nowadays it would be?
Okay, because she was claustrophobic, and then
I think it becomes significant if it affects your daily living. Like if it is so extreme, you can't even function.
Okay.
Like it cripples you.
Right.
Like you have somebody who has the fear of being in open places, agoraphobia. Like and that's the thing. If you can now not, is it agoraphobia?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, the Century had that.
And so if you can't go out and do regular things throughout the day, go to a job.
Yeah.
Okay, I would think that would, classify it as that. But nowadays, you may be able to function because they let you do things from home.
They do.
and you can DoorDash and bring your groceries, your medicine, like all this other stuff. So, man, a lot of those folks are like, man, what was this when I was growing up? I got screwed over.
So this is a website, mind.org.uk.
All right.
It says a phobia is a type of anxiety disorder.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And it's an extreme form of fear or anxiety triggered by a particular situation or object.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So what is the phobia for alligators?
Is there actually one?
I don't know, but I got it.
Man, there's so many of them.
My family, they joke on me.
There was an issue of Batman during the Rebirth where Bane was tearing through Arkham Asylum to get to Batman, and then he came to Scarecrow, and the panels kept talking about all the phobias: fear of God, fear of bats, and I was like, wow, I didn't know there's so many phobias out there.
Absolutely.
You know, the only one I've ever been familiar with is arachnophobia, thanks to my personal interest in Spider-Man. It came up now.
It is herpetophobia.
Herpetophobia. I have herpetophobia.
The extreme,
Badly.
irrational, overwhelming, and
It ain't
persistent
irrational.
fear of reptiles.
What's frogs? What frogs? I can't.
They're
falls
amphibians,
under
but
that.
I'm just saying that's ridiculous.
Bruh.
Like that's not irrational. Freaking, they will kill you.
Bro,
That's true.
I can't.
Just talking about it, my heart rate is going up right now.
You know a weird phobia that I developed when I was a kid?
What's that?
Sharks.
Sharks.
How is that a weird phobia?
Because it would be like I would be afraid of getting like the bathtub or like the
Oh,
swimming
okay,
pool.
yeah.
It was weird, bro.
Bro,
It was weird. I saw Jaws. It was a wrap.
It was a wrap.
Bro, when I was living in South Carolina, my parents were together. The neighbor, we were over a neighbor's house, and I was like 10 years. No, I was 9 years old, and the kid, like, hey, you want to see something? He took me to his pool. There was no water, but there were nothing but frogs.
No, yeah, that's
on
great.
it.
Yeah.
And then he played with me. He pushed me, but he held on to me by my shirt, and I was just like, oh, I was so scared. They were just leaping. I was like, yo, I can't do frogs.
Yeah, mine is
That's
heights.
crazy.
Mine is heights.
And listen, I'm a warning. If y'all think it's funny to run up on me, hey Josh, here's a frog.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. Like, you don't want to test my gangster
That's
on
funny.
that.
Don't
So
do it.
that's good to know that phobia is part of that tree, and that's why that's an honorable mention. So we're going to get to number 5, which is obsessive compulsive disorder, and this is, for lack of better words, I try to keep the definition as simple as possible. When a person gets caught in a cycle of obsessions and compulsions. And there's the biggest example of that I found in my research was Riddler, right?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, they also say that he also could have a good case for being on the autism spectrum disorder.
Yeah.
I had to depend on which variation
Yeah.
about him. Yeah, I
right?
can see that.
Because, I mean, he's always, I mean, even in the games, in the Batman Arkham games, like, you got to solve all the riddles. Like, he be having 235 riddles. Bro, I spent maybe 3 hours total within a span of 3 days, and YouTube videos trying to solve all the riddles. I hope I don't have OCD, because I was like, I gotta solve, like, I gotta get this at 100%.
That's they call it completionist. You're completionist.
Okay, because I was like, no, I'm gonna get this right.
Yeah.
Because it bugged me. Like, I come up on a riddle and I like, what do I do?
Yeah.
Like, he's testing me.
Yeah.
I didn't like that, but I saw, I can see that in the Riddler. Like, we've seen
funny.
so many iterations of him.
Yeah.
I mean, you're the Batman expert, Trey. What are your thoughts on that? Like, the Riddler.
Yeah. I mean, clearly,
Right.
he has something, and OCD is probably what I would lean towards. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm not a medical professional, but
Right, but like
the flags are there, bro.
Right,
The flags are there.
And then the other one is Mother's Milk from The Boys.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know, that's if you've seen Amazon Prime, if you have Amazon Prime, you've seen The Boys. It's wildly popular. It's very raunchy, and so was the comic book series in its own. But Mother's Milk, he definitely has OCD. He's about cleanliness and tidiness, which is interesting because he kills people. Blood is involved in getting splattered, but it's like, to me, because I don't know, I find that weird. Like, you're doing something that is dirty, and then
They said the same thing about me. I had the one partner who I always refer to. He's like, how can you be an OBGYN? And you're like you're a germaphobe.
Yeah.
But I wash my hands more
yeah.
than anybody. Like, and I had a pattern of having to do things.
Yeah.
I got to do it this way. I got to do it this way.
Yeah.
And it drove a lot of them crazy.
You watch that episode of Scrubs with Michael J. Fox?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
That dude, yeah.
Why he didn't get an Emmy for that?
But since we're talking about Michael J. Fox, he has a documentary called Steel on Apple TV. Fantastic.
Really?
Fantastic.
Gotta check that out.
I didn't realize how big of a Michael J. Fox fan I am until I watched this documentary.
Really?
It's really cool. They kind of highlight stuff in his career, but they use clips from movies as like dramatizations of actual things that happened in his life.
Oh, wow.
So like just an example, he starts talking about how he met his wife and how they fell in love and stuff. Yeah. And like they used a clip from a movie that they were in together, kind of walking on a date or something.
Oh like wow, that's cool.
It was really, really, really
well
good.
done.
Yeah,
really
I loved
good.
him in Spin City too.
Oh man, you don't realize how like famous and popular Michael J. Fox was, bro.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was the man.
He was the
man, bro.
Especially during the height, and that was around about the Back to the Future time and Teen Wolf and all that other stuff. He could do no wrong, dude.
And there's a show I watched called Curb Your Enthusiasm. Not to stay on Michael J. Fox for too long.
When he shook up
that was so funny. Like Larry David has no filter. You watch that, you be like, in half of what he does, like Larry, that's too much. And then the other half, you know what, you might be right.
Yeah, when he gave Larry David the soda and it exploded. Yeah. He was like Parkinson.
right. Oh,
that's awesome.
I love that Michael J. Fox was able to play to that and not, you know.
So, so obsessive compulsive.
Yes.
I had an issue where it was bad, like. And everybody knows I'm a germaphobe, but I feel bad for my daughter because and that's her mom's fault. So I'm going on record saying this is her mom's fault.
Right? All right, it's on the record.
But I couldn't, every time I touched the door, I had to wash my hands. So I literally would go to a door like 3 times, and if it touched anything, I had to go back and wash my hands. It was making me late for stuff.
Wow.
So when you wash your hands, you use the paper towel to open the door? Okay.
I probably still do that to this day. A lot of that is a function, too, of what I saw later. Public service announcement. Wash your hands when you leave or when you use the bathroom.
Please.
You can't come out of a doggone stall. Right. I'm not even talking about urinals. Definitely do the urinals. But when you come out of a stall and you go straight to open the door,
don't be nasty.
That's ridiculous. and this goes to you people too, who just splash your hand under the water for a second. Get some soap. Wash your hands, please. Anyway, but there were certain things that I was doing over and over until I perfected it because I couldn't move. And then I said one day, I literally self-treated myself and said, this is not normal. Yeah. This is, you can't function like this. You gotta stop.
Right.
So I just kind of flooded myself
and
I got out of it. And this was as I was a teenager.
All right, so we're gonna move on to the next one. The number 4 is bipolar disorder. And a lot of characters actually have this. The biggest ones that I'm gonna highlight on is Hank Pym. And then we have Nadia Pym, or who has later in the comic books changed her last name to Van Dyne. And then Polaris, I hope I'm saying that right. That's the daughter of Magneto. Mm-hmm. With Hank Pym, that's more visible for those who are definitely deep into the Avengers mythos, because there's a famous issue. Yeah, it's the famous Avengers issue. He wearing the yellow jacket uniform. He literally backhanded slapped Janet. And it wasn't like, oh, he was fighting a bad guy. Like it literally was him hitting a woman, assaulting a woman, and then he got in front of the Avengers, and they were going to decide whether he's still going to be a member or not. And then he had the idea, and it said that he was going to create a farce of a battle. Like I think he was trying to make like fake Ultron or something. So keep me honest, comic book fans. And they were storming in. He was gonna look like the hero, but then it went AWire, and then he ended up just resigning on his own. He has that. And he keeps having those type of patterns in the comic books, but I love that they don't make it seem like it's a one and done thing, because these things are not one and done. Right. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Not.
Right?
They're not.
You know, this is something you'd have to live with, but it has to be managed.
Right.
For bipolar, so is that? And I left it open because I want to come in here, not necessarily ignorant, but I just want to be able to have an understanding. Bipolar, that's when
you have mood swings. It's not a mood swing. Okay. I mean, if you want to call it that, is that to the umpteenth power. But you have depression episodes or periods, and then you have manic episodes. And that sounds like at that point he got to a manic episode, and that's when you have somebody all of a sudden, they're moving along, and then they go and they take out all of their life savings and blow it on a trip and what's the name, and then you have the depressed episodes where they fit the criterion of major depression. Okay. So you go to these, if you want to call it that, severe mood swings, but it's just not like, okay, you getting on my nerves and blah blah. You know.
Gotcha. Okay. And Polaris, from what I researched, what happened with her, her condition stemmed from exactly how her powers emerged as a mutant, and then led to a plane crash. And with Nadia, she is the secret daughter of Hank Pym. At one point, she first appeared in Civil War II Free Comic Book Day issue. And so the question I have is, so that means are these things hereditary?
Yeah, they have a hereditary component. You got to watch out for that, because you start seeing the pattern, you know, in your kids as they get older or whatever else. So there definitely is a genetic component, you know, to it.
Are there any Batman villains? Because the crazy thing about this is, I could have made this. We could all make our own list, literally off of Batman's rogue gallery. Yeah. There's so many conditions on them. Which ones have bipolar disorder? I'm just curious when we think about it.
I think you touched on the one that could be closest to it, because you see it, but I don't necessarily know that Two-Face is depressed.
Okay.
Because you see him swing to this level-headed, rational person to this violent, horrible villain.
Yeah, well, he would probably be more diagnosed with like multiple personalities. Yeah, or something like that. And again, I'm not a doctor,
right?
So.
No,
but then it's not great. That's the thing. Trying to fit somebody right.
That's the thing.
Into you have this. Where why is there a rule that you can't have multiple things?
Probably.
You can have multiple personalities.
Yeah.
You can have multiple psychiatric
disorders.
disorders.
Question: like, can you have multiple things? Do we always
Absolutely.
put it under one? Okay, so that, like,
and once again, it gets lazy. Like I talked about how a lot of the times with pregnancy, I think many pregnant women are misdiagnosed with postpartum depression, when a lot of it is adjustment disorder. You know, they're being overwhelmed and all these other things. Like you go from, you know, life is, you know, normal as you and your husband or maybe one, and now you're taking care of a living being. You're sleep deprived. You don't know what to do. You know, your husband may have just left you to go back to work and do stuff. And then you're there trying to figure it out on your own. And then they call you depressed.
Is it called postpartum depression?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then that's the thing. They have a postpartum blues where if it happens within a certain time period, you know, they're like, oh, it's too early for that. And then somebody picked some arbitrary, you know, day at some point. I guess it was done in some study. But if it happens before this time, maybe more postpartum blues. Okay, now it's still lingering on. It could be depression, but it could be something else. It could be depression. Like, there are definitely some women out there who suffer from it, but there could be some other things. But everybody gets looped in there, and it's just, I think it's lazy, because you'll have some people just throwing medicine at people and then sending them on their way.
Okay.
Because they really don't want to delve into it, and they think they're doing them a service, and they're really doing them a disservice, in my opinion. But whatever.
There's a sidebar we're gonna have after this. I want to talk to you about, because I recently did have a doctor appointment. I won't delve into it too much, but I mentioned stress, and they mentioned the medication
right off the bat,
and I'm gonna tell you what it is, but we'll later. Yeah, because
he mentioned stress.
I did.
They mentioned, well, we put on some medication.
I did.
There was a time period when they thought antidepressants should be in the water. Doctors were literally saying that. They were like, man, you know, some Zoloft should just be in the water. It's like, what?
So I guess my thing is, how do you treat, like, mental illness?
You treat it with, I mean, I think it's a team effort. It's the doctor, you know, it's the psychologist. Sometimes it will require medications.
It's just don't make that the quick, simple.
No. Right. Don't throw them in Arkham Asylum.
Yeah.
That's what they do. Right?
Facility.
Or is that an overstatement?
Like, it is multifaceted. And it's not easy. That's the thing.
You know, the thing about it is, like, even from a, you know, seeking help standpoint, it's really hard to, like, find help. One, it's ridiculously expensive
it is.
to find help.
You know what the waiting list
I can't imagine
to get into these appointments with these psychiatrists?
I can't imagine.
It's like ridiculous. Like, at some point, we're like, you can't see them for what, months?
And not everybody has a job where they give you like
it's not always taken care of. It's not always. And even so, on my last job, I got to this point where I was like, man, I got to talk to somebody. And so we had this thing. You call this thing and something. they give you a list of counselors, and you got to call them and all this other stuff, and get back to them, and they'll pay for it, whatever.
Yeah.
I called one, they didn't pick up, and they recommend these people. I called one, didn't pick up. I called the other, and maybe it was disconnected or something. And I called the last one, and they were like, I'm about to go on vacation. You might need to might need to call them back and get another name. And it was like, what if I'm like on the edge, man? What if I?
First of all, who is the person that they're recommended? That sounds like the person who put the little sign on the side of the street.
It was crazy.
I've been saving up for this Disney cruise forever. You're gonna be okay.
Like no, nothing. It was, and I was like,
that's terrible.
Bad. So what it did to me was, it was like, oh man, I'm not gonna.
Right.
Give you a complex?
No, it just you shut down. You're like, I got this. I'll figure it out.
Because
whatever.
what people don't realize is like getting to the point to where you realize like I got to talk to somebody. That's hard, bro.
Absolutely.
You got to get through pride. You got to get through ego. You got to get through all of that stuff to be like, no, I need some help.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you try to get help for somebody who is a quote unquote professional, to be like, you're gonna have to call your people again because I'm about to go to Disneyland. It's like, come on, man.
Yeah, man.
We don't want that. And with that being said. There's some characters here on number 3 and that's why I'm gonna pose that question to you guys, because we see these characters, they fight through it, but we don't actually see them getting help. And this is a post-traumatic stress disorder.
That's everybody.
Yeah, that's
all of them.
Right. And it's interesting. You're probably and everyone who's listening, why is that not number 1? You'll find out soon enough, because there are more people with number 1 than there are 3 as far as the comic book characters are concerned. But for post-traumatic stress disorder, and it does cover a multitude, and Doc will keep me honest on that. We have Jessica Jones. She went through the ringer with the Purple Man. Mm-hmm. You talking about abuse. Mm-hmm. And he had the power to control minds. Like, he would abuse women in front of her. She couldn't do nothing. She was pretty much still. Yeah. It doesn't, unless I'm wrong, it never showed in the comics that she went to seek help. Luke Cage ended up being her help, which is fine. There are people in our circle, and depending on situations, we can lean on for support. Yeah. Absolutely. Then you have the MCU Iron Man and Iron Man 3. That's absolutely PTSD, if I'm not mistaken, right? Like, you were seeing he had flashes of the battle in New York, and like it was triggering to the point where his armor thought Pepper was a threat to him, trying to defend him against that. And then we see him have panic attacks. Now, is that normal? Usually associated with PTSD, panic attacks like that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because you feel like, you find yourself waking up in these situations that trigger something. Yeah. And so that is a normal, I think, response to that. So, but, I got to argue that's number 1, because I can't go down the list of anybody in the comic. And we did it when we were started. You want to think of like a happy character like Superman, still to a certain degree. Yeah. He had something happen. I mean,
and I had a healthy debate with my wife about that.
Yeah. And so I think it touches. Name me a character right now who doesn't have a little bit or had some type of traumatic experience that didn't set them up. I mean, most of them, their powers were they got their powers because of an accident.
That's literally it's pretty much.
That's what I'm saying.
You have to have that happen in order for the gene to actually kick in.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's literally almost 98% of the mutants how they got their powers. Right. Trauma. Right. Trauma.
Yeah.
And then dealing with the trauma of I got these powers now, and I'm gonna be feared and hated by everybody, and I got to do all this other stuff, and I'm like, to a certain degree, something has happened to all of these characters. I mean, Peter, he just got bitten, but he had Uncle Ben.
Uncle
Ben was a father to
that
him.
was,
But the thing about Uncle Ben, and I don't know the comic book origin is, but in the movies, is a situation where he was in a position where he could.
Oh yeah, that's the comics. That's the story.
So, but the thing is, it's not just Uncle Ben dying. It's I could have stopped
him.
And
you talking about the guilt?
Yeah, you started the weight. Yeah, man. Right. It's stuff in my life that I'm like, man, I could have been the
Those things will haunt you though. I could have. I should have. If only.
Your boy Bruce, parents killed right in front of him.
Yeah.
That ain't PTSD. I don't know what it is.
His whole point is to make sure other people
don't go through
come up on
what
the
he
list.
did. That's what I'm saying.
And think about Bucky. He was brainwashed to slaughter people. He served in the war. And then that that program finally died off. But the memory that gave me chills in Civil War. Where Iron Man said, "Do you remember them, I remember all of them.
Right.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All of that stuff, and he could he's living in his body and he has no control. He's watching, helpless, not being able to do stuff.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
To this day, my girls can't even give Cap any love just because he was trying to help his friend, and they were like, "But he heard that." I'm like,
Yeah.
Do you not get it? Like
they don't.
tell them to subscribe so we can talk. Don't
They
you get
cannot
it?
stand. They just think Cap. They just don't give him any love.
Like, his best friend went through the ringer. Like, come on. And then, matter of fact, Cap has some sort of guilt as well because he feel like you were alive all this time and I didn't know. I could have helped you. I could have saved you.
That's a part of his issue.
Right. So you think Cap has PTSD?
Well,
He was frozen in ice, right? And then he woke up to a world he didn't recognize. Years later.
I wonder if it would be. So I think you could go deep into, and I don't know how it affects him in the comic books. I don't know if war ever affects him in the comic
I would
books.
say war would do it more so.
But that is a
That's
trauma.
a guilt. That is.
Right, because, we know in real life, of course, there are, first of all, thank you to all the service members for your service to our country.
100%.
We do know that service members do have that.
Absolutely.
Do
they
not
will have
get taken
that. And it's
care
just
of.
about the levels of it and where it takes them. My father was in the Air Force. I thank God that he didn't go through anything to that effect. Then again, I don't know because he's never
Talk
me.
about
He
it.
never talked about it.
Dude, I'm gonna tell you something. So I used to go. I might have talked about this before, but I used to go to this camp when I was a kid, and one of the counselors was a guy who was had been in war, and some kid brought firecrackers and lit the firecracker, goes off, and look, I don't know for sure, but there was a change in this person after he heard those firecrackers go off, and it was weird, man. So Dave Chappelle, one of my favorite quotes from him was he was talking about when he went to Africa and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And he said the worst thing that you can call somebody is crazy is because it's dismissive. It was like, because I don't understand you, you're crazy, right? And so, I'm a kid, so I don't know anything about any of this stuff.
Right, of course.
Right?
Right.
And it's like, just knowing that, first of all, most of us have trauma.
Yeah.
Most of us have some form of something. And maybe even PTSD to some degree. Like the idea that it's war and you gotta see that extreme. Most of us don't see things in that
No,
extreme.
we're not going to put it as levels.
It's
to it.
levels.
There is levels to it.
But it's like parents don't think about the trauma that they're putting their kids through. And they're not part of it is they're not thinking about it because it was taught to them. So now you're starting this
generational.
It almost becomes a generational curse because it's taught and it's learned. And I talked about it a minute ago. I've never seen my mom cry.
Right.
And so my whole life, my problems were my problem. But at some point, it was like, no, this is
right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like someone has to break the cycle.
Right.
At some point, in order to stop the generational curse. And it's just a matter of who it falls under. But now that we're talking about this, like this, for the first time, I'm this old when I realized my dad never talked about the Air Force. The only thing I know about it is he met my mom and he was honorably discharged, and that's it.
Yeah.
So it definitely behooved us to check on people, man.
Right.
just ask if people are okay.
Right.
with
That's it.
Even if the people that you, because a lot of times what'll happen, we might be the person that's like, hey, make sure you're good, and people will say I'm fine.
Right.
Keep asking.
Right.
Keep asking. Don't ever stop asking.
Don't stop. And with that, y'all, we're gonna move on to the second one, which is dissociative identity disorder, DID. And Doc does have a comic of a character in the DC universe who suffers from that. Doc, can you tell us about that character?
Well, and once again,
Dope cover.
This is going to be, her name is Jane. In the book, I think is the chief, but essentially, she has like over 60 personalities. And each personality has a different ability.
Wow.
Right.
That's interesting.
Like with Legion from X-Men.
Legion, yeah.
Right.
I think Legion. He has a finite number. Maybe he has more, but each one, Legion,
right.
uber power, Omega level mutant.
I mean, with your father being Professor X.
Professor X is his dad,
right.
and that dude. Once again, like they did you ever see Legion? The show.
The show was it good? I
Man,
never watched
it started out. It was pretty good,
it
but
started out pretty good.
going back to what I said, when your brain works. and another person, quote unquote, theirs doesn't, that's hard.
Yeah.
I found myself, one of the best parts of that movie was I didn't know what was real and what wasn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
what he was going through, I'm like, okay, is this in his head
It
or is
looks
this
psychedelic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is he really in the institution right now, or is this all in his head?
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And then you mentioned also Two-Face prior. So this would be something Two-Face would have as well, right? Because we see so many comic book iterations and TV shows for that effect, when he's showing up in them, animated or otherwise, they'll have him talk as Harvey Dent and then have him talk as Two-Face.
Yeah.
There was a panel, there was a comic book where it had panels. It was during the No Man's Land. You're probably familiar with that, where the government wrote off Gotham, and Harvey was putting Jim Gordon on trial and Renee Montoya on trial for bending the rules or whatnot in order to maintain their GCPD territory and such, and working with Harvey Dent, which is funny because he's the criminal. But like, did you not work with the criminal named Two-Face? But it's you. You're Two-Face. And then he puts himself on the stand, and the panel has his one face and then his disfigured face. But each air quote bubble is it's like he's talking to himself, but each other.
Yeah.
Like that just blew my mind. Like to be able to write like that, and then to see Oscar Isaac portray Moon Knight.
Yeah.
To create those characters, Steve Grant, Mark Spector, and Jake Lockley.
Right.
It's a real thing. Even there was a movie, right? What was the movie? It fell into the Unbreakable universe. Your boy,
Split.
Split.
Yeah.
Split. Like even that.
That was great. I love that.
I love that.
I loved it at the end.
Yeah.
I loved it when the reveal happened. Then it was like, oh, this movie was crazy.
Yeah.
But up until that, I was like,
So it's like, I think to myself, again, I'm ignorant to all of this. Like, does the brain not get overwhelmed or shut down from having so many personalities like that? Again, I'm not a doctor, but it's like, to me, someone who's looking outside, it looks exhausting.
Right.
Yeah.
Because each personality has its traits and characteristics that are complete opposites of the other personality.
Yeah, and it's wild because even like cases that I've kind of seen televised or through some whatever, you don't remember the actions that you know.
It's like a blackout. Is it like a blackout? Like so for those who are alcoholics, they'll get to a drunken stupor and then they don't remember what happens prior to that.
I mean, from the things that I've seen, it's kind of just like that. You don't know what's going on. You're not.
Yeah.
It's dude, the mind is a amazing thing, but it's a scary thing, bro. Like,
because it's so, and then I just think about the people who have to play these characters.
Yeah.
My concern would be is like you're playing them and you have to believe this for yourself because as actors, they have to immerse themselves in the role. And I think about where Michael B. Jordan played Killmonger, and he revealed he had to go to therapy because he was still Killmonger after the movie was over, and he had to learn how to disengage from that. I think about, can that not take a toll on the actors who have to play these characters with these type of disorders? It's kind of freaky that way, the way that.
Yeah, but I mean, you got to think how, because not just actors, because obviously actors have to put themselves in certain mind spaces, and but just like I just think about people, man, and I think about how we're shaped. Like we're all just like this amalgam of our experiences and our influences, right?
Right.
And we live in a time where, in my opinion, like. I heard Shaq talking about some stuff, and he was like, I don't like to use the D word because I don't know exactly what that is.
Right.
And I think part of the reason you say something like that is because, like, we got a lot of people self-diagnosing themselves, and me included. But and we also are in a space where, again, the things that kids are dealing with are different than the things that we dealt with, which are different than the things our parents dealt with. And so how you handle those things are a little different. Like, I had a bully when I was a kid, but I didn't have to go to a separate water fountain.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And it's like, I had issues that I had growing up, but, my niece and nephews grew up in a different space where social media is such a thing. And we see how adults are struggling with social media and engaging with people in that space where you really like. I use music as an example. You know, me the person, I'm completely different than who I am as the artist, at least back then. Because in my head, I learned early on, like my mom was heavy in the church. And so by default, I was heavy in the church. And I'm really an introvert. And I'm very to myself, and I don't really like to talk.
Which is funny as an entertainer.
But I'm going to tell you.
No, I get you.
Yeah, so what happens is, I learned early to develop a persona.
Oh,
so
gotcha.
my mom would kind of put me in front of things. Like I was always on these choirs, and I was always on these boards, and I was always on these things, and I was always in front of people, and I was always speaking at the thing, and I was always. And I have anxiety, man. I'm talking about like if I'm at work and we're on a Zoom meeting and they ask me to speak, I start shaking. You know what I mean? It's like I don't like being in those positions. I don't like attention. I don't like people looking at me. I don't like the way it feels. And so I literally had to develop another person that could handle that stuff,
right?
Because I can't,
right?
You know what I'm saying? Like it's almost
it's your alter ego. That's awesome.
That's what happens.
Right. I mean, and you
but
talk about Batman.
Honestly,
like
that's where I fell
he
in
said
love.
he was Batman. He's Batman.
That's where my love for Batman came in because it was a duality. He's these different people, and what he realized that like in order to be himself, he's got to show a different face to people.
Right.
And
you had something done?
No, that's fine. Sure. No, I'm slipping. There is a book where this came up, and it just hit me when you were talking about Harvey Dent. Like Heroes in Crisis.
You're right. I forgot all about that.
DC did this book about that basically Wonder Woman, Superman, and Batman, and obviously you know who funded it.
Yeah, for sure. The one who funds everything.
They came up with this place where the superheroes can go. It was like this little retreat that they set up so that the heroes can go there and get counseling and get help.
Yeah.
I thought that was awesome. I haven't seen Marvel do anything like that yet.
No.
You know what my question would be? Would that hurt their ability to be heroes?
So
well, to a certain degree, it did because it somehow it also ended up being a murder case because something happened. Somebody snapped. Somebody did something. You got to read it.
It's really good.
But it was. I mean, there was so many levels to it. Even Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman got flack for. They're like, why did you guys have to be the head of? When it came from a good place with them, but they were just like you literally had. It started out with panels of individual heroes sitting there talking to this thing.
Yeah,
it kind of put them at odds with Lois Lane a little bit because Lois like, Clark, I love you, but I got to report on this.
Exactly. Like, there was all of these different levels to it.
Yeah,
I got to do this.
It was well done, and then when you find out who was the whodunit, you're like, what? Right. Are you kidding me?
It's amazing, man. You definitely got to read those out there. Doc, do you have any of those in your shop?
They sold out.
Of course.
I'll double check, but I think it's sold out.
You guys definitely got to read that. And with that, we're going to go to number one. And of course, like always, if you don't agree with the list, or if you do agree with the list, definitely we want to hear from you. Make sure you comment under the number one that I put down for the list for top 5 mental illness comic book characters suffer from is depression. The reason why, now this is my reasoning, is because with all of the mental illnesses that we have discussed thus far, to me, depression, it feels like it's the OG of mental illnesses. Like it's so you got Batman, right? He lost his parents, right? That's a trauma, but of course.
Not just lost; they were killed in front of him.
Right, right. When he was a kid.
You
can't read that book and at one point be like, okay, he had to be depressed at some point. Like, or he probably may still be depressed. It really depends on opinion, right?
Yeah, probably. If he was ever depressed, he's probably still depressed.
Right.
I mean we went under the criteria.
You
don't have to have them all, but
right.
Depressed most of the day.
Yeah.
He didn't have any weight loss. Can you argue that he has lost joy in
for sure.
Things that he do?
The way I look at it, like one, he's definitely got PTSD.
Oh yeah,
right, absolutely.
But the way he's like, he's so moody and so, what's the word I'm looking for?
Melancholic.
Melancholic, yeah, but like, Nah, he's
definitely.
He doesn't have fatigue, or does he? He just hides it well.
Yeah, but here's the thing that people,
that's people.
Let's do that. Let's go down the list.
But I wonder though, how those things manifested themselves. Like, because you also have people who are functioning.
Yeah. They
absolutely.
And I know
they're
somebody
functioning depressive.
functioning depressive, and sometimes what they do is like they throw themselves in a particular space where it's like somebody who works really hard on the job and then goes home and just can't get out of the bed.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's like,
and that's why you don't know. You're like, I didn't realize they were having an issue because at work they're this.
Yeah, right.
Highly functional at work.
Right.
It can be argued where Batman may even have borderline personality disorder.
Sure.
And this off of a Quora, this app, it listed someone who has BPD. They listed the criteria: frantic attempts to avoid abandonment, intense unstable relationships, unstable self-image, mood liability. Thank you. Impulsivity and recklessness. Now, this one, I don't think he's ever done this. Suicide or self-harm. Has Batman ever done that?
So it depends on how you look at it.
Is he? Because he keeps putting himself in these situations.
But that's what heroes do, right?
But that's how you tell it.
Right.
That's how you tell the story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like he can literally be beat down, have nothing left, and he will still jump back into that fray.
Listen, he's you know, talking about Tony Stark all the time. Like Steve Rogers in the movies be like, you'll never be the one to make the sacrifice play. Right. Batman is always the one like, no, you guys leave.
Right. And then so also said paranoia and so I mean, brother eye. So I guess
okay, let's do this. Depressed mood.
Okay.
Check.
Okay.
Markedly diminished interest or pleasure in most of all activities.
Check.
Because Bruce is just a front.
Yeah.
And you say he's a part-timer in Justice League.
Significant weight loss, poor appetite, or weight gain. No.
Well, see, here's the thing. We don't ever see him eating.
No, Alfred makes sure he
cucumber sandwiches.
Right.
He did.
But
even though he doesn't want to, he wasn't there.
That's my thing.
You know, okay. Insomnia or hypersomnia? Check.
He does REM now. REM.
Yeah, sleep.
Yeah.
Psychomotor retardation? No, not really. He's a peak athlete, you know.
Oh, he's definitely peak.
Fatigue or loss of energy? No, he keeps it moving.
Yeah, he does keep it moving.
Dude. I mean, he doesn't have to have all of these.
That's the thing. He pushes
boundaries.
Feelings of worthlessness or excessive inappropriate guilt.
Well, he does.
He got that down pat.
All right, diminished ability to think or concentrate. Nope. Dude got like based off of
look, man.
Our
would you prescribe him some medication?
He got like 70%.
He got like 7.
Right. And he's definitely not alone. Daredevil, of course, suffered from depression as well. The Kingpin put him through the ringer at one point where he knew he was Matt Murdock. He was taking everything away from him, like the Born Again storyline. Those who know the comic books, that really dealt into that heavily. And this one, so Thor in Avengers Endgame.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm going to just keep it real, and please forgive me. When I first saw Endgame and I saw that, when I heard people in the audience talking about, hey, look, that's Fat Thor. I'm like, oh, yeah, he is. I didn't pay no attention past the surface. I'm like, yeah, he did gain some weight.
Yeah.
But then as the movie progressed, you know, I'm like, okay, because there was a scene where they were talking about who's going to get the stones, who wouldn't, and all that. And then he was like, no, I need this. I need this.
Right.
Dude is depressed.
Yeah. Big time.
For sure.
Right. There was no doubt about it.
He's depressed. Like, we shouldn't be doing this. And I know for a fact that the Russo brothers did not do that just so people can call him Fat Thor.
No.
You know, they did that because, okay, this is the toll it took. Like, he should have went for the head.
There was some comedy relief to it, but he became a recluse.
Oh, yeah. I was just about to talk about that.
Sat up there, and, you know, you talk about, they're going over a game plan of how to save the world.
Yeah.
He is asleep. We just talked about fatigue and whatever else. We talked about excessive weight gain. That dude was losing it. He started crying midway through the thing. Rocket slapping him. And eventually, you know, he's like, okay, speaking of Rocket, PTSD.
Oh, absolutely. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Go see that.
I'm going to tell you what's fun. I just read this really interesting thing about Rocket. I sent it to myself. So they were talking to James Gunn. And he said that it's from slashfilm.com. The headline is James Gunn had one strict rule for all Rocket Raccoon's appearances in the MCU. And he says
Essentially, Rocket could never be the hero.
He could never be the hero. Everything he did was selfish motivation.
Gotcha.
Everything he did was selfish motivation.
Okay.
And like, you know, the thing about all of this is like, you never know what people are going through, and you never know what has triggered somebody to be the way that they are.
Absolutely.
Like, I'll be honest with you, man. Like, I talk to a lot of people all the time. Yeah. And one of the things that I ask people are they happy? Mm-hmm. And the other thing I ask people is, if you could be doing anything right now, would it be this? And most people would be like, no. Right? And so what you realize is like, we're just out here, and sometimes doing what we got to do.
It's going through the motions.
But I think it's going through the motions, but a lot of it is on set because people are so afraid to be themselves. Because being yourself brings about judgment. Being yourself brings about cancellation. It brings about all of these other things, and it's not even whatever it is, right? Like, it's rarely a day that I get up and I feel like I'm fulfilling my potential. You know what I'm saying? And there's a struggle between who I used to be and who I thought I would be and who I might actually be. And the person in my head that I could be is way different than the person that I believe myself to be. Right? And so that's a daily struggle, man. And like, I got a job that I hate. But I got to pay the bills. But this thing takes all of my time, so I don't have any time to put towards anything that I want to do. And even when I have time to put towards things that I want to do, I don't feel like it. I want to be in the bed. I want to. It's like, but it's a lot of people dealing with things, and one, don't have outlets to speak about it. Two, don't have people who around them who feel like they genuinely care about certain things. And then two, if you're going through something and I'm going through something and neither one of us are talking about what we're going through, what environment does that create? Right. And so like, you really have to make an effort to I'm gonna say be happy, but I'm only saying be happy for the lack of better terms. It's probably more so you have to do what you can to be fulfilled.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
absolutely.
And it gets hard. Like, I know I have a fear of abandonment. I know I have, and I'm probably self-diagnosing. But man, we were reading off that depression stuff, and I was like, yep. Okay. And so, it's just really tough, man. And so, if you're dealing with something, like, really, just don't be afraid to talk to somebody about it, man.
Please,
because this stuff will manifest itself in ways that you're not equipped to handle.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely not. And I am not ashamed to say that I went to seek help 2 years ago. You know, I took advantage of my job's EAP, but like you mentioned, Trey, it took me 6 months to even before that to get to the point to even call the number.
Well, yeah, but you say 6 months, but it was 6 months that you were thinking about it.
Yes.
Right. And what's the EAP for those who don't know what that is?
So that is employee assistant. I feel bad. I don't know what the P stands for.
I'll look at it.
Employee something.
Because they need to know.
Yeah, you're right.
So they can reach out to it.
Yeah, so definitely reach out through your job if they have that. It is definitely worth it. It is free. It is 12 sessions. That's 12 monthly sessions. So once you get to the end of the yearly stipend for that, you can literally, depending on your job, hopefully, which honestly it should be like that.
First of all, healthcare should be free.
Thank you.
Healthcare should be free.
Honestly, let's just keep it 100.
You shouldn't be in a position where you got to be able to afford to be okay.
Right. Exactly.
That's ridiculous to me.
So that's going to be another topic. But yeah, if you have if you have it, go ahead and go forward with it and do that. I promise you, it's helpful. I have no problem saying that I went to it, and then my wife later joined in on the sessions, and it was so self-healing. And that's what you have to do. You have to take charge of yourself.
Yeah, listen, in relationships, go get couples counseling, go get couples therapy, go do that stuff.
It's not taboo.
If you or anyone you know is struggling with mental health, one resource is the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Simply go to 988lifeline.org or dial 988 on your phone. The 988 Lifeline provides 24/7 free and confidential support for people in distress. Sometimes superheroes need help too.